So in this JS Fiddle editor here, I want to create a basic to-do app. So let's add input. And the nice thing about JS Fiddle is we can just type input and then hit enter to create an input element. Type text is okay. We also need a button so that we are able to submit this to add the to-do. So maybe let's give it a caption of add to-do. And then we need some place where we can render all these to-dos in an unordered list probably. So that is all the HTML code I need for now. Now in JavaScript, we need to get access to all these elements, create new list items, and add them to the list. So let's do so now. I'll create a variable here, which I'll name input L. The name is up to you, where I will use document query selector, a built-in method JavaScript offers, which allows me to select the element by its CSS selector. And I can just use input here to select this input element. Side note, if this is brand new to you, definitely make sure to dive into some course dedicated to teaching you JavaScript. This is not the goal of this course. You won't learn JavaScript in this course. I do expect you to either know it already or, as I just mentioned, to have some course where you follow along. This course is about helping you making the next step, choosing the right framework for the job for front-end development. So this selects the input element. Let's now add button L2 with document query selector button to also get access to that button in our DOM. Now finally, I'll add ULL to also get access to this unordered list. So query selector UL will give us access to it. We got access to all these elements. Now we need to add an event listener to the button so that whenever we click it, we do add a new to-do. So let's grab this button element, this variable here, and use add event listener like this, listener, to add a new listener, a click event. And here I want to execute a function which I'll create here. I'll name this function add to do, like this, a normal JavaScript function here. And now we can pass a reference to this function to the event listener as a second argument, add to do, and make sure to not add parentheses thereafter. I only want to store the link to this function, so to say. I don't want to execute it here. So in add to do, we now want to create a new list item. So I will simply name this to do li. The name is up to you. And here I will use document create element to create such a new element. And here we simply pass the tag, the HTML tag of the element we want to create. Li in this case, list item. Now, of course, we also should add whatever the user entered. So we need to fetch that. And I will actually fetch that before we create this list item, because maybe the user didn't enter anything. And in this case, I don't want to create a new list item. So I will check, or I will retrieve the user input from our input element. And there we can access the value property. Property, not method, which is a default property provided by JavaScript on input HTML elements. Now this gives us the, value the user entered. Now I want to check whether this is empty. So I can check user input and then maybe trim, a built-in JavaScript function to remove all leading or trailing white space so that we rule out the case that the user entered just a couple of white spaces, blanks. So I will then compare the trimmed value to an empty string. And if the string is empty, so if the user didn't enter anything, I just want to return. I don't want to continue execution. If we do have a valid input, I want to create this list item though. And then I can say to-do list item text content to now set the text content of this newly created list item equal to the user input. Now finally, with the list item created, we just have to add it to the DOM, to our unordered list. So I can use my ULL variable, which holds a reference to this unordered list in the DOM. And there I can call append child to add this to-do list item. Now that is our basic app. By hitting Control Enter in JS Fiddle, we do render it, so we see that input element here. If I click Add to Do like this, nothing happens. If we open up the console log, we see no error besides this one, which we may ignore. But if I now say buy milk, so if I enter something valid, it is added. If I enter a couple of white spaces, nothing happens. But if I enter answer questions here, we got this too. So that is our basic, very basic to-do application working. However, I want to add more functionality to it before we then dive into libraries to see why vanilla JavaScript might not be everything we need here.